People don't pay you for your credentials. They pay you for how they feel when they're around you. That might sound radical, even offensive in a world obsessed with degrees and titles, but it's the raw truth no one teaches in school. From the moment we're born, we're trained to wait for permission, to seek validation, to gather gold stars, certificates, diplomas, all the external markers of legitimacy. But the truth is, some of the most impactful, magnetic people alive never checked those boxes. They didn't wait for permission. They became the permission. They didn't speak from a script. They spoke from the soul. They didn't memorize theories. They lived the experience. And people didn't pay them because they were qualified. They paid them because they were real. Carl Jung, a pioneer in depth psychology, spoke about archetypes, timeless energies that live within us. These are not skills you learn. These are truths you embody. And when you embody them, people feel it, and that changes everything. This isn't about faking authority. It's about reclaiming the truth that's already inside you. It's about learning to own your inner authority, the voice that doesn't need external applause because it knows its value. Right now, in this moment, your lived experience, your wounds, your lessons, that is your real credibility. You might not have letters after your name. You might not have a polished website or a perfect elevator pitch. But if you've walked through fire and come out with wisdom, people will pay you for that. Because people don't pay for information anymore. Information is free. It's everywhere. What they pay for is transformation. They pay to feel something. To feel seen, heard, understood. They pay to experience something real. A shift, a breakthrough, a moment of being held by someone who actually gets it. And you don't need a degree to offer that. You need clarity. You need resonance. You need emotional truth. You could be 25, having battled crippling anxiety and learned how to soothe your nervous system, and a 50-year-old CEO could pay you thousands to help them find that same peace. Because transformation isn't age-dependent. It's not about a resume. It's about truth. People pay for real, for depth, for energy. But here's where most people get stuck. They hide their truth. They feel like imposters. That inner voice whispers, "Who am I to charge for this? I'm not qualified." But Carl Jung would say, that's your shadow talking. That's the wounded part of you that still believes you need someone else to validate your worth. And no business strategy, no pricing template, no Instagram reel is going to fix that. Because your energy speaks louder than your words. People feel when you don't believe in yourself. They feel when you're still waiting for someone to crown you as enough. And here's the catch. The unconscious never lies. You can post all the right content and say all the right things, but if deep down you feel like a fraud, people will sense it. And they won't buy. Not because you're not talented, but because you're not embodied. Embodiment means your voice matches your message. It means you speak with frequency, not performance. It means your story pulses through your words in a way that makes people say, "Damn, I feel that." And that is what they trust. That is what they pay for. Not polish. Not credentials. But resonance. So if you're wondering, okay, but how do I actually get people to pay me for my gifts? Good. That question means you're close to something powerful. You're ready to stop asking the world for permission and start remembering who you really are. Let me ask you this, not with your mind, but with your body. Have you ever met someone who didn't have the fanciest title or the longest resume, but something about them just hit you? Their presence, their calm, their honesty, it stuck with you. That's the power of someone who has owned their story. It's unteachable. It's unforgettable. Because here's the truth that flips the whole game. Your story is your certification. Every breakdown, every heartbreak, every relapse, every triumph, every slow night of healing when no one was watching, that is your training. Carl Jung would call this the process of individuation, becoming the truest version of yourself underneath all the masks. And when you walk that path consciously, your life becomes a roadmap for others. Your wounds become medicine. Your scars become signposts. But most people don't see it that way. They see their story as a liability, something to hide, something to edit. They think people only trust you if you're shiny and perfect. But that's backwards. People trust presence, not performance. Imagine two people offering the same service. One says, "I have a certification from XYZ Institute and 300 hours of training." The other says, "I've lived this. I felt this pain. I've crawled out of it. And I know how to guide others through it." Who do you feel safer with? Probably the second one. Because when it comes to healing, growing, shifting, we don't hire robots. We hire humans. Humans who've been through it and can hold space for us to go through it too. Carl Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That means your value isn't in being flawless. It's in being honest. And when you're honest, emotionally honest, people feel it. That's what builds trust. That's what sells. Not a fancy funnel. Not a sales script. But a voice that says, I see you because I've been you. So stop hiding your magic. Stop apologizing for not having the paper. That paper isn't what makes people pull out their wallet. It's the story. Your story. Told with truth. Owned with energy. That's what makes people lean in. That's what makes you unforgettable. You don't need permission. You are the permission. People often believe they need a perfect brand to be successful. They think it means having the right logo, the perfect aesthetic, speaking like a polished motivational speaker, dressing the part, rehearsing every line. But the truth is, that's not what creates trust. That's not what people are actually drawn to. Because you can look like the ideal expert and still feel completely out of alignment. You can sound like you know it all and still not move a single soul. Why? Because true credibility isn't about how well you perform. It's about how deeply you resonate. And that resonance doesn't come from your head. It comes from your truth. This is where most people miss the mark. They try so hard to look professional that they forget how to be real. But people don't want perfection anymore. They want presence. They want to feel something. And if you're constantly editing your story to appear polished, respectable, or credible, you're hiding the very thing that makes you powerful. Your pain isn't a flaw, it's a portal. Your mess isn't something to clean up, it's a magnet. Your story isn't a distraction from your brand, it is your brand. The question is, are you owning it or are you still trimming away the parts that feel unprofessional, when in truth, those are the parts that make you human? Think about it. If you treated your story like it was sacred, how would you show up? What would you share? How would you speak, write, create? Would you still pretend to be someone you're not? Or would you stand in the full truth of who you are? Let that question sink in. Because the business world rarely tells you this, but the soul world knows it. The people who create real transformation, the ones who spark revolutions, heal others, and move culture forward, aren't always the most educated. They're not always the most articulate or certified. What they are is integrated. They've taken their story and owned it. They've stepped into who they truly are. Carl Jung had a name for these kinds of people. He called them living archetypes. They don't play roles, they embody energy. They don't market with hype. They magnetize through presence. They show up as the healer, the guide, the rebel, the creator, the mystic, not as a gimmick but as a deep truth. And that kind of embodiment speaks louder than any resume. Here's the powerful secret. People don't consciously pay for that, but their unconscious does. The unconscious mind is constantly scanning for authenticity, alignment, depth. It doesn't care if you have a diploma. It cares if you feel true. That's why someone might say, I don't even know why, but I just felt like I needed to work with you. That's not luck. That's resonance. So ask yourself, what archetype are you quietly hiding? Were you born to be a healer, but you're afraid to claim it because you never went to therapy school? Are you naturally rebellious, always questioning the system, but you keep toning it down to seem respectable? Do people come to you for calm, for truth, for insight, but you still think, who am I to charge for this? That hesitation, that self-doubt, is what Jung called the unintegrated self. It's the part of you that knows your power but doesn't trust it yet. But when you finally own it, something sacred happens. You don't need to sell anymore. You don't need to perform. You become magnetic. Not by force but by truth. The world is aching for realness. People are starving for soul. The most valuable thing you can offer isn't a shiny brand. It's your unedited self. And every archetype holds value. Every one of them can create impact and income. Because money doesn't follow strategy. It follows value. And value looks different depending on who you are. If you're someone who holds space for others, helps them feel safe, seen, supported, that is healer energy. You don't need a license to be a presence that soothes. People pay for emotional safety. In fact, that kind of space holding is rarer than you think, and people invest in it deeply. Maybe you're someone who challenges the system. You question what's broken. You speak up before it's trendy. That's rebel energy. You're here to disrupt, to build something better, to lead movements and make noise in a world full of silence. That fire? That vision? People pay for that kind of courage because it reminds them of their own. Or maybe you're the one who brings clarity. You see through the fog. You simplify what's overwhelming. You offer wisdom without trying. That's the guide, the sage, the mentor, the philosopher. You help people make sense of their chaos. People will pay for that perspective. In books, in sessions, in communities, in frameworks, because it gives them direction. Perhaps you're deeply heart-centered. You lead with empathy. You feel what others can't put into words. You offer softness in a hard world. That's lover energy. You may not think of it as a business model, but trust me, compassion is a currency. People invest in spaces where they feel safe enough to be fully themselves. Or maybe you're a creator, someone who translates soul into form. You write, you design, you express what others feel but don't know how to say. You're not just making things, you're creating resonance. You help people feel alive, and that's more valuable than you've ever been told. And then there's the alchemist, the mystic, the one who holds the invisible threads, the spiritual, the energetic, the mysterious. You lead ceremonies, offer intuitive readings, guide people through inner transformations. And even though society tries to undervalue that work, it's needed more than ever. Because transformation doesn't always look logical, but it feels real. And people will pay for what moves their soul. Whatever your archetype, it has worth. And the moment you stop trying to be what you think the market wants and start embodying who you actually are, that's when everything shifts. That's when clients appear. That's when your voice starts to carry. That's when money follows meaning. You don't need to become something else to succeed. You need to remember who you are. You don't need a certificate to prove you matter. You just need to own your energy so fully that the world can't look away. And you definitely don't need to fit into a mold, because you were never meant to blend in. You were born to be the mirror that reflects others back to their truth, not through perfection, but through presence. This is what the new paradigm of leadership looks like. Not performance, not polish, but power, the kind that comes from radical honesty and self-ownership. You are not just anything. You are carrying an archetype. You are a force, and the world needs what you've been hiding. It's time to bring it forward, not someday, not once you feel ready, but now. You don't need to become someone else to get paid. In fact, the opposite is true. You need to become more of who you already are. The deeper truth is this: every archetype, every way of being has a natural path to prosperity. But that path stays hidden until you stop abandoning your essence, stop shrinking your gifts, stop muting your truth to appear more acceptable. The moment you begin to own your design, fully, freely, without apology, everything begins to change. The people you're meant to serve, attract, guide, or inspire can finally see you clearly, because they're not looking for a perfect expert or a scripted guru or a 10-step checklist. They're looking for something real, a reflection, a mirror, a reminder of what's possible. This isn't just about getting paid. It's much bigger than that. This is about changing the world by changing the frequency we live in. When you embody your truth, not just talk about it, not just package it, but live it, you create a ripple. You become a living example. You become permission for others to do the same. You stop adding to the noise of performative perfection and start contributing to the deeper current of authenticity. That's what Carl Jung meant when he said, "The most dangerous thing is the unlived life." Because when we disown our gifts, when we bury our voice and call it humility, when we silence our soul to survive a system, we contribute to a world of numbness, burnout, and disconnection. But when you choose differently, when you claim your archetype, when you walk in your truth, when you stop editing who you are, you become a beacon. You shift consciousness without preaching. You inspire healing without trying. You don't need more credentials. You don't need a bigger audience. What you need is to be real, because that's the energy people are craving. Not another perfect face on a screen, but someone whose presence feels like coming home. And yes, people will pay for that. Not because you tricked them, pressured them, or sold them some shiny promise, but because you awakened something in them they forgot they were missing. And yet, most people never step into this level of truth, not because they lack the talent, but because they're blocked by one of the deepest inner distortions, their relationship with money itself. Somewhere along the line, most of us were taught that being paid for our gifts is selfish, that it's wrong to receive if your work helps others, that healing, love, service, or spirit should come from sacrifice. And that old belief, even if you don't consciously believe it anymore, still lives in your nervous system. If you tense up when you say your price, if you feel guilt when someone says yes, if you shrink a little every time you talk about your work, your body is carrying that shame. You're not alone. This is inherited. We learned it from religions, cultures, families, systems that praised martyrdom and demonized self-worth. But here's the truth no one told you. Money is just energy. It's not dirty. It's not greedy. It's not unspiritual. It's a current, a flow. And when someone pays you with love and intention, it's not a transaction. It's a transformation. They are saying, "I choose growth. I choose healing. I choose this version of me." And you, through your art, your insight, your gift, your space holding, are helping them arrive at that version. That exchange is sacred. So let's tell the truth. If you don't believe you're allowed to receive, you'll sabotage your ability to give. You'll burn out. You'll resent your own work. You'll say yes to the wrong clients, undercharge out of guilt, overdeliver out of fear, and quietly wish it all felt different. That's not noble. That's not holy. That's unsustainable. But when you allow yourself to be nourished, when your needs are met, your time respected, your work valued, you show up with power. You speak more clearly. You create more freely. You give with joy, not obligation. You share from overflow, not depletion. And that's what makes your work last. That's what makes it revolutionary. This isn't about chasing wealth for the sake of ego. This is about aligning your energy so that wealth becomes a reflection of purpose, not an escape from it. So now it's your turn. What old story about money are you ready to let go of? What belief are you finally willing to put down? Maybe it's the idea that being spiritual means being broke, or that helping others shouldn't be profitable, or that you're just a creative, just a space holder, just a listener. You are not just anything. You are a portal for truth. You are a mirror for healing. You are a living transmission of what it means to be aligned and alive. And people feel that. And yes, they will pay for that when you believe they should. So let's reframe this completely. Being paid for your soul work isn't selfish, it's sacred. Earning with integrity isn't greedy, it's grounded. Your worth doesn't need permission, it needs recognition. You don't need to hustle, beg, convince, or shrink. You just need to stop apologizing for being here. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are exactly what someone out there is praying to find, not because you're perfect, but because you're you. If any part of this speaks to your soul, let it land. Let it anchor. And if you're ready, say this to yourself, or write it in the comments, or in your journal, or on your mirror. I am ready to be paid for being fully myself. Or write your own truth. Something that feels real in your body. Something your future self will whisper thank you for. And if you want more of this energy, more of this remembrance, more of this soul-rooted wisdom, stay close. Subscribe to Fractal Wisdom. This space is here to help you wake up, show up, and rewrite everything you were taught about value, success, purpose, and being. Because the world doesn't need more polished professionals. It needs more people who remember who they are and charge accordingly. You're allowed to be visible. You're allowed to be supported. And yes, you are allowed to be paid. So go. Be who you are. The world is already waiting.